Joy Lab.
Hi, I'm Tonya. Today I'm going to show you how to take a recipe out of a celebrity chef cookbook and turn it into a freezer meal. Gordon Ramsay, you've probably seen him on TV. If you haven't ever seen him on TV, you probably recognize his face and his personality type. His cookbook that I'm working from is Gordon Ramsay Quick and Delicious. Each recipe is supposed to be done in 30 minutes or less. We are making mustard and herb meatballs with balsamic glaze and Parmesan cheese. And it looks delicious. Let's get started. Here are the ingredients for mustard and herb meatballs with balsamic glaze and Parmesan. The meatballs themselves are ground beef with some thyme and rosemary, slices of bread soaked in milk, some egg for a binder, and then of course the Dijon mustard, hence the name mustard and herb meatballs. The glaze is balsamic vinegar, sprinkled with some fresh Parmesan on the top. I don't know about you, but growing up, my mom never ever made homemade meatballs. Whenever we had homemade spaghetti, it was with ground beef, ground. And as a grown-up and a home cook, now I understand why she never ever did homemade meatballs. They are a slimy, greasy mess. It gets all over your hands, and then when you're frying them, it gets all over the stove top and burns up your hands too. It can be an ordeal to make homemade meatballs, so it has to be worth it. We'll see if Gordon Ramsay's quick and easy mustard and herb meatballs with balsamic glaze and Parmesan, we'll see if it's worth the trouble. But no matter, for freezer meals, you want to front load the work. If you're going to the trouble to make homemade meatballs, don't just make one batch. I'm going to make 3 batches. I'm going to triple the recipe for Gordon Ramsay's mustard and herb homemade meatballs. Then I'm going to use my freezer so that I can have some for now and some for later. And that's the joy of freezer meals. After a busy day, you can come home and pull something out of the freezer and have a delicious dinner with less mess and less stress at dinner time. So let's start making this recipe now together. Gordon Ramsay's quick and delicious mustard and herb meatballs go like this. It's 4 slices of bread, the crusts cut off. It's kind of your standard meatball recipe, but it's special. And then with this leftover, you just quarter the bread to make it slightly smaller pieces. I am tripling the recipe. That means I need 4 times 3. I need 12 slices of bread. I only have this much bread left, but these slices of bread are thick, so I think we'll be okay. Wow, so just 8 slices of bread, but these are very thick slices of bread. You can use any kind of bread, your favorite, whatever. Now we're going to soak the bread in herb seasoned milk. The recipe is for a 1/2 cup milk. Since we are tripling the recipe, a 1/2 cup milk becomes 1.5 cup milk. Now comes the herbs. Here are 2 sprigs of rosemary from my yard. The recipe calls for 2 sprigs of rosemary. Which size is a sprig? I do not know. Actually, that's what Google is for. Google says a sprig of fresh herbs is 2 to 4 inches. 2 to 4 inches, that's a wide range. This sprig is 2 inches. This sprig is 4 inches if we went here. I say that is a big difference. Gordon, you should just do measurements of dried herbs for the home cook, please. Maybe it's the fresh that makes it special. We are using dried herbs. So how much, if I am supposed to have 2 sprigs of rosemary, a sprig of dried rosemary is about a half a teaspoon. 2 sprigs, a half teaspoon each, that's, you know it, 1 teaspoon for the recipe of rosemary leaves. If we are doing 3 times the recipe, it is 3 teaspoons of rosemary leaves. And we're putting them in milk. 1, 2, 3. Seems like a lot. 5 sprigs of thyme. 5 sprigs of thyme. So that would be 5 times 3 is 15. 15 half teaspoons of thyme. So that is how many teaspoons? 15 half teaspoons is 7.5 teaspoons of thyme. That's too much. I'm not going to do that many. Instead of 7, let's see, I did 3 teaspoons of the rosemary. Oh, that thyme smells so good. If you were here right now, oh, you would get this wonderful flavor. Thyme leaves, instead of the rosemary was 3 teaspoons, I'll do 4 teaspoons of the thyme leaves, since it was 2 sprigs to 5 sprigs. That's a lot of seasoning. It's going to be delicious. Smells very delicious. And then you just drop your bread in to let the bread soak in that herbed milk. And we'll set this aside. Since we are tripling the recipe for Gordon Ramsay's mustard and herb meatballs, you're going to need a big bowl. And if you don't have a big bowl, I have a link in the description below where you can get one for yourself. Another good thing about freezer meals is you can buy in bulk, which saves money. This is 3 pounds of ground beef. The recipe calls for 1 pound of ground beef. If there's a sale, stock up on ground beef. It always reminds me of toothpaste, squeezing toothpaste out of a tube. Giant meat toothpaste. Takes a lot of strength to be a cook, even a home cook. The recipe calls for 1 egg. We're tripling it. 3 eggs. Oh, I should have done the mustard first, because now my hands are slimy. I'll be back. Three tablespoons Dijon mustard. Now, Gordon Ramsay's recipe says, with clean hands, mix this together. Well, yes, of course you would have clean hands. You're cooking. All right, let's just do it. That's a good start. Let's add the sopping soaked in milk with herbs. If you have small children at home, they may enjoy this part. You may get to put them to work in your kitchen. I like using glass bowls because you can look through the clear sides to see where you need to do some better mixing. Actually, if you have a small child at home, you probably shouldn't let them play with raw meat. Looks pretty good. Gotta clean up. Gordon Ramsay's Mustard and Herb Meatballs. The next step is to make these into meatballs and fry them in some hot olive oil on the stovetop. That's the second part of meatballs that I just don't like doing. It's too splattery and too messy. We're going to do the baked meatball method, especially since we have probably 800 meatballs, just kidding, 1,000 meatballs in this bowl. Just kidding. The recipe says 1 pound of ground beef makes 24 meatballs. So if we have 3 pounds of ground beef, 3 times 24 is around 72, 73. Anyway, that's a lot of meatballs to stand at the stove and turn and make sure that they get browned on all sides. We're going to bake them in the oven, which is a perfectly fine way to make meatballs, and they get browned just fine. Now, for freezer meals, we are doing the work up front, so we will bake them, and then once they're cool, we'll set aside some and put in a baggie in the freezer. That's how we're modifying this recipe for freezer meals. I have my jelly roll pans, 2 of them. Let me show you why. I don't want to clean up messy, slimy meatball juice, so I'm going to use my heavy-duty foil and line one of my pans. Ooh, that's noisy. Easy. Now I could put the meatballs right on the foil and put them in the oven. I'm going to bake them on a cooling rack. That keeps them out of the oil and they get a little bit more browned all around. They bake a little bit better, in my opinion, on a cooling rack raised above the pan when you bake meatballs in the oven. I'm going to use my cookie scoop. This is about a tablespoon size, so I don't have to touch the raw meat anymore. I'm thinking that I should have had all the bread. I should have had the 12 slices of bread instead of the 8 slices of bread. These meatballs are awfully soft. I feel like we're going to end up with flat meatballs. You're not here to feel the texture, but you can see how they kind of aren't holding their shape, right? So if you are going to make Gordon Ramsay's mustard and herb meatballs, make sure you use all the bread that it says. Even though bread slices are so different in size. We'll see how these come out. So even if we end up with meat patties instead of meatballs, the flavor will be delicious based on how good they smell right now. I'm going to put these in the oven on 400 degrees for 20 to 25 minutes, and we'll see them when they come out. While the meatballs are cooking, I'll tell you why I'm cooking from Gordon Ramsay's quick and delicious cookbook. Meetup. Meetup is a website where you can meet new people who share your interests through online and in-person events. Type in cooking and where you live, and I bet at least a dozen cooking-related meetups will appear. I found a meetup that cooks from a different cookbook for their monthly potlucks. It's my first time. Look at all the good food. Everyone was friendly and I had fun, and I look forward to next month's potluck. Look! They didn't turn into meat pellets after all. They're beautiful meatballs. You know, I think I'll broil them for a few minutes to get some browning on the top. Now, I must confess, when I make meatballs for my family, I usually don't. I buy them from the store, already pre-made. And if you're having a party, these are perfectly fine because people are talking and they're laughing and they're having a great conversation. They're not really tasting the meatballs. They're tasting the sauce that the meatballs are in. This is what the store-bought ones look like. You can compare the difference in how they look. These are definitely factory made, and these are definitely made by me. But it's taste that's important. Store-bought meatballs with the inside, and let's compare it to the homemade meatballs. Gordon Ramsay's mustard and herb recipe. They don't look that much difference inside. I'm going to taste the store-bought one first. And again, that meatball is pretty much just to have something to hold sauce on. There's not really any flavor, it's just a nice, good texture. It does have a good consistency. Good consistency and good texture. Now we'll try Gordon Ramsay's mustard and herb meatball. Okay, I like the texture much better. Now that I've tasted the homemade meatballs, the texture is much better, and the flavor actually fresh. It tastes more fresh if you can have meat that tastes more fresh. I don't taste like a ton of rosemary, a ton of thyme, a ton of mustard, but it's more subtle. Interesting. Gotta have more. Gordon Ramsay says to drizzle it with the balsamic glaze. 2 little dollops, and add some timber. Add some Parmesan cheese. The only way I've ever had meatballs is with a tomato sauce. With the balsamic glaze, it's tart and a little bit sweet, and I'm glad I didn't put too much on because I think it would overwhelm the meatballs. Very good. Yes, I do like that very much. I have a lot more meatballs to make. You saw that big old bowl. And I will freeze them. Once theirs are cooled, I will freeze them in a freezer Ziploc bagging. Always have a quick meal for a busy weeknight. Now that the meatballs are cool enough to touch, I can freeze them. This is a flat sheet with a Teflon sheet curling up on me. Just place your meatballs in a single layer. And pop them in the freezer. Once they're frozen, I will put these in a labeled Ziploc baggie, a freezer baggie, so that I will have meatballs ready whenever I want them. Here are my frozen meatballs. I have a bag labeled Mustard and Herb Meatballs. Easy. Freezer meals are all about making your life easier. It's less expensive, you have less mess, you have less waste, and you can enjoy your evenings by front-loading the work. I have all sorts of resources in the description below, including a link to purchase your own copy of Gordon Ramsay's quick and delicious cookbook, which, after tasting this recipe, I definitely recommend. My name is Tonya. Thanks for watching.
Joy Lab. Learning done right. Learn more with Joy Lab. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Visit us at www.joylab.biz. Thank you.